All right.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. For those who don't know me, my name is Daniela Maggianino. I am overseeing our technology partnerships and integrations at Kisi. And Envoy, they're one of our most esteemed partners. They're our integrated platform with security, visitor management, as well as flexible workplaces, mostly. And yeah, we have Danny Gilliland here today. He's the head of sales strategy and operations at Envoy. Really excited to have this conversation with you, Danny.
Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So Danny, of course, you have over 10 years of experience in SaaS, strategy, growth. The workplace is obviously the context that we're working with today. So I'm excited for you to bring this over to this. To get started, just setting up some context. Of course, since COVID, the idea of the workplace has changed a lot. As Michael P. kindly said, hybrid is here to stay. So what are some of these technologies? What is some of the tech stack that is entering into this ecosystem that is going to make it more innovative, more accessible? How is it changing? And tell us more from your experience.
Yeah, I think a couple other folks covered it, but the world has changed. I think employees' expectations of the workplace have gone up significantly. The experience is supposed to be much more seamless. Technology is not supposed to get in the way. The bar is, or the default is, I can do this from home, so why do I need to go in? And so the way that we think about that experience is, how do we make it as automated as, Okta, all the software platforms that they do use from home. When I go into the office, how can I make that experience just as seamless for people? And that's both on the employee side and on the visitor side. So when I drive in, can it automatically check me in so that whatever desk I reserved in advance is booked for me and no one else can book it? Does it check to see if I came in so that the rooms that I booked remain booked, or does it free up the room for the folks that did come in so that they can rebook the room? All of this, we are this kind of the software layer in between, but we rely on all the other systems like Kisi, like other access control vendors, videos, Wi-Fi. We can automatically give a visitor credentials. So all of these are parts of a seamless experience that we think about designing for anyone who comes into the office. And by visitors, we don't just mean your friend coming over for lunch. It's your vendors, it's your clients, it's people that you want to have a really good experience on the front end. And then on the back end, you want to have a secure experience. So you want to make sure that you know exactly who it was, that you've checked against any kind of database to make sure that you're ITAR compliant, that they are who they say they are, and that when they show up, they can have that seamless experience because you've already done all that work in advance. And then it's a temporary access for your visitors that is revoked at a certain point as they leave the building, and then you have that log for your use at any point in the future.
That's a very interesting point that you mentioned, the whole front end and sort of back end of what happens in the workplace. So I think we've covered some of the technologies that we, of course, want to have in these spaces, like access control, cameras, Wi-Fi. That's one part. From your perspective and from the clients that you speak with, how are they implementing that in their space? And what are some of those recommendations that you would say, hey, this is what your space looks like, this is what you want to have in it, here's how you actually implement it to make use of it?
Yeah, I think to Michael's point, it really starts with the experience that you want to have. And so if you think about all the different pieces of technology that someone will interact with, you want to make sure that all of those solutions meet those priorities. So is it seamless? Can they have access to the things that they want to have access to? Is it secure? All of those things. And this has to be true. And then how do you make that true across multiple offices? So if you do have a co-working space, or you have a multi-tenant building, a campus, maybe you have a strip mall location, all these different places, and you want to make sure that as much as possible you have a consistent experience for your hybrid employees, that you are accurately tracking and allowing them to visit these locations and understanding when and where they're going into work. A lot of companies want to know how their space is being used. Is that a permanent employee in that location? How many days a week are they going in? What days a week are they going in? Should I be ordering more food? Should I be, can I make sure that they're getting credit for the days that they go in a different office? I am currently for example, I'm currently in violation of my company's in-office policy, but I worked in our New York office yesterday, and I'm here working today. So a lot of what we've tested out as Envoy, we kind of forced the issue a year ago for ourselves to say, okay, we're going to do 3 days in the office, the whole company, every office. these same 3 days, so Tuesday through Thursday. And in order to figure out how to make that work so that we could explain to our clients, how we made it work, we broke a lot of things. It was difficult to make sure that we had all that tracking, that people felt like their work was being seen, and yet we were flexible to all the things that come up in life. And my kids are sick every other week, that kind of thing. So if you really have to think about how you want your offices to work, how you want to use your space, do you want to free up some desks? If only half of the desks are being used on average, do you downsize the space, or do you just rethink the other half of that space? I mean, to Michael's experience, a lot of things that people want out of their office experience today that they maybe didn't expect 5 years ago.
Yeah, and I was told not to specifically ask about Envoy's product, but I mean, we have to talk about it because you guys really do have a really interesting platform. And you mentioned all of this data, all of this sort of like visual occupancy information that co-working spaces or workplaces should have in accordance to their users and their members. Can you tell us more about what kind of data and how you visualize in your platform to make sure that you can track that occupancy?
Yeah, all those systems I just mentioned, we integrate with to try to triangulate or get as many different data points as we can to understand exactly what's happening. So if you have geolocation turned on, that's our default setting. So when I'm maybe 2 blocks away from the office, I get it off from a bus, and then I get a notification that I've checked into my workspace. If I have that turned off for whatever reason, then when I scan in on Kisi, it will automatically log that I've attended the office. If I've tailgated someone, then when I finally connect to the Wi-Fi, then that's the third check. So again, the seamless experience piece, because if I do go in and then it doesn't tag that I did, and then I hear from my manager or from HR that, hey, I'm not hitting my my office minimum, I'm going to be frustrated because I was there, but it didn't log that. I think Tom mentioned Okta as another check. So there's all these different ways that we can try to triangulate who's coming in and what they're doing. If they have a room booked and then they check into that room, that's another check. So there's a lot of different ways we can make this seamless, but it does involve integrating with many solutions. And I think Michael did a good job of showing that complexity. A lot of the things on that page where there's the platform layer, those are I was joking with Paula, that looks very similar to our roadmap of how we think about how to build into the future. Some things I didn't see on there is also, at the front desk experience, one of the things that we've heard from our clients that we thought maybe we had some more time on, but people moved on this during the pandemic where if they saw an office downsizing or they closed an office and then opened a new one, the front desk staff is actually not as prominent as a position as it used to be. So when you get into an office, whether you're a visitor or an employee, can you take a photo? It'll automatically scan your face and sign you in, automatically provision your access, give you Wi-Fi access. If your host is in a meeting, tell you that they're in a meeting, you can go into the kitchen, access the restrooms, but it won't let you access the other rooms. So thinking about that experience of how do we create a better front desk when there's no one there versus just, hey, sit in the lobby and then hope that someone will come find you at the right time, and maybe you came at the wrong time and your host doesn't know. So there's a lot of potential friction points when you take some humans out of the equation. You realize how much that front desk person was a bit of a Band-Aid on all the potential hiccups that come when you go visit an office.
Yeah, that's also really interesting that you bring up the user experience from the user perspective, because of course it's clear, as a company or as a space, you want to have this occupancy data, you want your users to have a great time, but from the user perspective, you want to trust these technologies. You want to know that, hey, I actually did come in on Monday, maybe at 9:15, but I was there. So you want to make sure that you can trust those tools in place. And from my experience, as a woman, if I ever I do go to the office, but when I go to the office and when I go to the workplace, I want to make sure that I'm safe, that I'm secure, and knowing that there are tools in place where you're tracking, where you have that kind of visibility to make sure that everyone who comes feels not just invited, as we saw with the beautiful design and beautiful spaces, beautiful windows, but also productive in the sense that you don't have to think about, am I gonna be able to focus here today because of reasons that I don't want to mention, right?
Yeah.
So that's to me is really important. It's just knowing that, hey, it's not just as a company, you have good data, you have good dashboards, you have good tools. As a user, you also show up to your space knowing that they got your back.
Yeah, I mean, employee safety and security is a huge priority right now, especially when you take that front desk person away. Then how do you create the technology infrastructure to make people feel that they know that no one who's not supposed to be in your building is going to be in there? So that's the flip side of, okay, if you take the human out and then you have a seamless technology experience, well, that experience also needs to be very safe and secure. And that's a difficult needle to thread. You have to be very intentional and make sure you know exactly who is coming in and who is leaving and when, and make sure that your employees feel safe when they're in the office. And then further, if you are potentially a manufacturing facility or are under some sort of compliance regulations, you also have to report that data back to the government, or if you ever get audited, you have to produce it all quickly. And tabulating a bunch of sign-ins on pen and paper is a risky and also very cumbersome process. And so this is perfect opportunities for technology to solve the problems of finding that intersection between flexibility, safety, and security.
Love that. And in the sense of redefining the visitor experience, I love that you mentioned how sometimes you do have to report all of these data to someone else, and you have to be clear in saying, hey, this is how many permanent employees I got, this is how many contractors came in, this is how much staff we had that was unknown, or people that came for only a couple of weeks. So how do we redefine what a guest is? What is a visitor?
Yeah, I mentioned that a little earlier where I think early in my career, I thought a guest was someone who came and had lunch at our cool office when I worked at Square. But now, it has changed a lot. A lot of companies are using temporary contractors to come in for certain periods of time. So can I give someone 2 weeks of access? Are they allowed to book a desk for those weeks, book a room, have temporary credentials where I feel that they can still have the great kind of temporary employee experience that all the rest of my employees have, positive contractor experience while contributing and doing their best work, but that I know exactly who it was, that it was secure, they had all the right credentials. So contractors, vendors that come in and make deliveries, potentially work on the building. Clients, which obviously is probably the peak of visitor experience where you want them to, especially if they're about to or are currently paying you a lot of money, having 10 guests, especially if they're executives, all sign in on pen and paper. It's not an amazing look for your company. Again, that you've maybe designed this beautiful office, you've put all this thought and money into the different aspects of the experience and the aesthetic, but you also want them to have a seamless experience because they're VIPs and they probably feel like they shouldn't have to sign in, and they shouldn't. But you still need to comply, and so giving them the chance, or their EA a chance to do that beforehand with technology allows that seamless experience. So those are generally the types of visitors we see, but then we're always seeing different use cases and people finding creative ways to use the visitor's solution to bring people into their offices.
I like what you just said about giving people information beforehand, because I feel like a lot of times people just think, oh, technology is great, it's fast, it's seamless, you just implement it, you show up, and then everything works perfectly. But actually there's a lot of work and a lot of preparation before the guest or the visitor, or however we want to call it, actually shows up to that place. So perhaps visitor management innovation also means making sure that these tools allow you to have enough preparation before they show up to the space. Yeah. What are some of the things that you see clients doing to ensure community, collaboration with the technologies before they show up?
Before they show up, yeah, and that's part of the visitor experience where when I get that invite email, I can, if I have to upload my passport, whatever the other requirements are, and then it says, hey, okay, here's exactly our address. If you're coming by public transportation, take this method. Here's a parking, if you're parking, park here or park in our garage. We'll reserve a spot for you. You could potentially open the access door with Kisi if that's the access control you have. And thinking about all the ways to make it easy once you get there, so you're not typing in all the manual information. I think Michael's example is a good one again, where if I have to go type in my name 3 different places to get into a building, it's just not a good experience. And we've done some work on that on the lobby side as well, but there's a lot more, as he alluded to, it's a very complex problem. And so there's a lot to make it so that when you walk into the building, you have the same experience as when you get up to the floor that you're going to, regardless of the tenant. And so that's part of our vision as well, where no matter what type of building you're going to, where in the world, where in the country, you can have the same seamless experience by putting a lot of that work up front before you get into the office. What room you're going to, how to navigate there. When you show up, you can get a automatic image of the map of the office so you know where you're going if you do need to go to the restroom or the kitchen or what have you.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that you just mentioned falls under the buzzword of automation, which sometimes also people think that it's just robots replacing jobs when you're like, actually it's called APIs, integrated solutions. Hello, welcome to the 21st century. So I think that's really interesting too in the sense of the seamless user experience, just making sure that from lobby to tenant to elevator to whatever method they use from the street to getting to their office, there are technologies that are simply integrated, making that much faster. So of course, because I work for Kisi, I am interested in the security aspect of it. So how do you, again, obviously, so how do you bring in more of that security in the front door space before as well and during the visitors?
Yeah, so I mentioned, the first step is the pre-work. So then once we know exactly who you are, we've run your information against whatever database we check to ensure that you are who you say you are and you're allowed in our building. I think the next piece is going up and you take your photo to prove that you were there, and then we scan to confirm that whatever photo you uploaded is who took the picture. And then we've immediately created a much more secure environment because we know exactly who that person is. They're only allowed one access control scan, no one can tailgate them. And then that's how you know exactly who's in the building, or you gate the right people from getting in the building. And then again, afterwards, with all of the data you have, you can triangulate with other systems. You want to make sure that from your camera system, no one else was tailgating. You want to look at all of your logs to make sure the lobby, the elevator, and the front door to your office are all telling you the same thing, and you can actually reconcile the badge swipes with the people moving in and out of your office. So you mentioned APIs. There's just so many different best-in-class technology vendors taking a different piece of this puzzle. And so a lot of what we're trying to do is figure out how to prioritize which ones we want to integrate with, and then seamlessly combine all those to better serve our customers, their visitors, and their employees.
And what are some of the challenges in deciding which ones you want to integrate with? This is a rhetorical question.
Yeah.
Asking for
well,
a friend.
Kisi was obviously top of the list, but in strategy and operations, I think about this a lot, right? So what is our current ideal customer profile? Who has been buying a lot of Envoy? Where is it a good fit end to end today? And then where do we want to go into the future? And so you're always trying to balance, how do I best serve and retain my current customers and make sure that they're happy, but also build for the next rung up, because naturally we all want to move up market, get more stable revenue, and serve larger clients. And then how do you do that without opening a can of worms each time where you realize I built one point solution on one endpoint for one customer just to save an enterprise customer, and then I realized that was just the surface of what they need to actually solve the problem. And so a lot of this is about building solutions for your customers versus thinking through specific features or products that may be the next thing that's demanded. We're really thinking about how to solve a business challenge. So what is the next business challenge we want to take on? And given the evolution of our products, visitors, we're in much more of a position to take on enterprise clients than we are on the workplace side. The workplace side, as I said, we've just sort of built the product for ourselves, and then we're testing out what do we actually need to move up market. On the workplace product, solving for employees versus visitors, it's how do we integrate with other enterprise systems, and do you actually want to integrate with an HRIS, or does that not make sense? Is your CSV upload good enough? And so those are the trade-offs you think about of how do I create the right solution where the experience is still consistent and really strong regardless of the size of the customer, versus just chasing the next deal or the next feature.
Completely agree. And I think there's also the very important elephant in the room is that when you integrate and when you also focus on the user experience and providing a product solution that works, you automatically increase the revenue for you and for your secondary or middle customers as well. So I think it's also important to recognize, when we integrate and when we're going after new solutions, like how are we growing not just in the brand or in the offering sense, but also what value can the partners bring to that ecosystem. So keeps up with the efficiency, not just for the user, but also, of course, for whoever is implementing it. Which ultimately leads me to my next question, which is, how can we reduce admin tasks as well and keep efficiency with that revenue perspective?
Yeah, the lowest hanging fruit is obviously manually signing in in the lobby or at the front desk. I think that's most likely the most onerous task that, administrative tasks regarding visitors, but there's also a lot on the back end, and I'm sure you all think about this a lot, like that log data is gold, but actually interpreting it can be challenging. And this is a lot of where we've come in, and a lot of the work we've done on all of our access control integrations is making that data readable and usable. And what you're really trying to get at in a lot of cases as a CEO or whoever's monitoring your policy is what happened this day? How many visitors came in? How many employees? How did we use our space? Did we order the right amount of food? So you have kind of a point question, and then you want to just be able to go into one software platform and see the answer to your question easily. Similar thing on the security and compliance side. You have to produce a list, and it's got to have exactly full name, contact information, address, location they visited, duration of visit. So all of these detailed data points that traditionally this is a perfect solution for technology to come in and solve that problem. And so those are two of the largest things that we're trying to solve, and that we get questions on from our customers, is what actually happened in my offices every day, which is not, it sounds a little bit crazy to say, but up until hybrid work in the pandemic, people just didn't, employers just didn't know, and it wasn't that big of a deal, and it was okay. But now with the limited amount of people going in and the increased security and concern around security and increased compliance needs, this has become top of mind for almost every customer we talk to, and that's a lot of the reason we engage with our customers initially, or they come find us, is because they need answers to these simple questions that they never had to answer before.
Simple, but very important.
Yeah, the elegant solution is one that is simple on the front and very complex, on the end. So
I like that definition. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, just to close out, it sounds like some of those industry trends are obviously around data. What else is new? Besides the data, what other things do you see people implement with the technology and then their tech stack in their spaces?
Yeah, I think you use the word automation, and I think I go back to Brian's slide. He's got a lot of stuff there. There's the IoT. There's how do I make sure that everything is secure, but I'm also maximizing my employee experience, their health and safety, minimizing my energy usage. There are some companies that have a sensor on or how long someone's sitting at their desk. There's no end to the data that companies can collect, and what we're seeing is just a much better view, like real-time 3D rendering of exactly what's going on in every office at any given point in time. And so the connected buildings concept, I think, is finally really taking hold. I think the residential market actually moved a little bit faster on this, and now in a lot of ways businesses are catching up to all the things that you can view and monitor in your space. And so it is really just a mass of data starting to come out of these companies, and how to interpret that, that's going to stop being just an enterprise capability because they have data scientists, to any size company can really optimize their usage, minimize their real estate costs while maximizing experience and safety. And that intersection, I think, is where more and more companies are going to go.
Love it. Great. Well, it's lunchtime. I know we're hungry. Everybody's probably looking at the New York hot dogs outside, like my food's getting cold. So we're going to have a few questions, maybe 1, 3. Anybody? Yes?
Sorry, I'll invite all those ones soon. So you did mention there's a whole ecosystem of best-in-class solutions, right? Looking back at your context started, it was all very monolithic. One big company doing everything kind of okay. Now this best-in-class ecosystem, well, with the capital markets the way they are, seeing a lot of M&A activities, ongoing much companies will launch. Is there a risk of us going back to this idea, or there being one company that does everything kind of okay, or three companies that do everything okay? And from that, what should Workspace leaders ask their vendors about that? Do you think there's any risk of that, us going back to that, or is there enough of a spread now that we won't go back to that model?
It's a good question. I think in any industry you have kind of the disbursement and a bunch of solving of point solutions and startups solving new problems in the space, and then a slow consolidation. I think with private equity where it is, we're also seeing that a lot more. Some of our biggest competitors are just cobbling together a few different solutions via private equity acquisition. So I think that is a real risk. I think on the access control side, it's a little bit more interesting because even as a, Accenture, for example, they probably have to deal with 10 different access controls across all their buildings around the world, maybe more. And that is where I think when shopping for solutions, it's how do I actually make sure that I can have a holistic solution across all my different hardware? And that's the really important piece. And sometimes that might be custom, but sometimes it will be tempting to go with one particular vendor. And what you'll just have to go in eyes wide open in is like if I go and take, let's take access control as an example, and then this vendor has really good reporting, but my 5 other ones don't. Well, I'm still going to pay for that in that instance, but how do I make sure that I have the same data across all my different locations? And is there someone who can consolidate? And if not, then I have to sign up for getting that data myself. And so it's really, again, back to the solution side, like what solution are you trying to solve? And do I have to cobble together different solutions? Is there one that actually can take over a chunk? But I think we are a ways off from having one solution, one vendor that can handle all your different hardware and software needs at various locations. Like, from what I've seen, that still feels a little ways off.
Great. Well, one more thing, more exciting than lunch, is that after the conference, Envoy is also hosting a happy hour at the Laissez-Faire Lounge. So if you want to keep talking about visitor management or not, feel free to come. And I heard that if you also tell them what your 3 key takeaways were from this reading or lecture or whatever we just did, you get a new drink. So I don't know. I would show up. Just saying. Thank you, Danny.
Thanks.